Aries. Fire sign. Cardinal force. The one who moves before the world has decided it's ready, the one who has always trusted that momentum is a form of faith. This week, the cosmos hands you something that very few signs can handle with as much instinct as you: disruption with a purpose. The week opens with Mercury entering Gemini on May 13th, and for Aries, this ignites your third house of communication, of quick movement, of ideas that arrive faster than you can write them down. Your mind shifts into a higher gear this week. Conversations that have been sluggish suddenly accelerate. A piece of information you've been waiting for may arrive early in the week, and it changes the shape of something you thought was already decided. But the deeper energy of this week belongs to the last quarter moon, which perfects on May 18th. The last quarter moon is the cosmic invitation to release, to complete what was illuminated at the full moon in Scorpio last week, and ask yourself, what am I still carrying that no longer belongs to me? For Aries, this lands in a particularly important part of your chart, your 8th house of transformation, of shared resources, of the things you've inherited, emotionally and materially, from the people who built you. Saturn continues its transit through your sign, Aries, and this week it asks you to be accountable not just for where you're going, but for what you're leaving behind. Not everything that needs to end requires a dramatic exit. Some things end quietly, in a moment of clear-eyed recognition that you have simply outgrown them. And Pluto retrograde in Aquarius continues to deepen its work in your 11th house of community, of friendship, of the collective you belong to. Old alliances are being re-examined. New connections are forming in the space that cleared. This is not a week of sudden external action, it is a week of profound internal knowing that shapes the next bold move. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Aries this week is the Tower. I know. Breathe. The Tower is not the end of things, it is the end of things that were never real. It is lightning striking the structure that looked solid but was built on something unsteady. And for Aries in love this week, the Tower arrives not as punishment but as liberation, a sudden, clarifying moment that tells you the truth you may have been too close to see. For those of you in relationships, something is revealed this week. A conversation long overdue finally happens. A dynamic that has been simmering reaches a point where it must be acknowledged. This is not the end of the relationship, unless the relationship was built on something that couldn't survive honesty. Most of the time, the Tower in love means that a false version of the connection falls away, making room for something more genuine to stand in its place. The Mercury-Gemini ingress on May 13th opens your communication house wide. Words that have been difficult to find will come more easily this week. Say what needs to be said. Say it clearly. Say it with the courage that is, ultimately, your most attractive quality. For those of you who are single, the Tower may arrive as a sudden shift in how you see a situation, or a person, you thought you understood. Trust what you see now over what you believed before. Your action step this week: have the one conversation you've been postponing. The Tower has already cleared the air, your job is to step into what it revealed. Money and career. The Tower in professional life, for Aries, signals that a structure you've been building, a plan, a strategy, a professional alliance, may shift dramatically this week. Before you spiral, this is often the card of sudden breakthrough disguised as disruption. The thing that falls down was blocking the view. When the wall comes down, you can finally see the landscape. Mercury entering Gemini activates your third house of contracts, agreements, and short-distance movement. This is an excellent week for finalizing negotiations, for putting words to deals, for the rapid back and forth that Aries instinctively excels at when the stakes are real. If there's a proposal, a pitch, or a contract in your world this week, move on it. Mercury in Gemini rewards quick thinking and decisive communication. Financially, the last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th asks you to audit what's actually working. You are in a period of consolidation before the new lunar cycle begins. Don't spend aggressively this week, instead, assess. Where is money going that isn't aligned with where you're heading? The Tower has a financial dimension for Aries. Something may shift suddenly in your income or expense picture. Stay nimble. Saturn in Aries will reward professionalism this week. Document your work. Show up early. Let the structure you built hold, even while the structures around you might be shaking. Health and energy. Aries, your energy this week has an electric, almost volatile quality, and how you work with that charge will determine the week. The Tower is associated with adrenaline, with sudden release, with the physical sensation of something dropping away. You may feel alternating waves of high alertness and exhaustion. The key is not to fight the cycle. When energy rises, direct it. When it drops, rest completely rather than pushing through. Your head and jaw, the body parts ruled by Aries, may carry tension this week as internal reckonings rise to the surface. Jaw rolling, slow walks, cold water on the face, these are small physical resets that help your nervous system process what your mind is working through. The Mercury ingress into Gemini can create a kind of mental overdrive, too many inputs, too many ideas, too many conversations. Ground yourself physically each day. Feet on earth. Body before mind. The insights will come faster and clearer when your nervous system is not overwhelmed. The last quarter moon midweek is a natural rest point. Let yourself be quieter than usual in the days leading up to May 18th. What you release energetically this week creates space for the vitality that the new lunar cycle brings. Personal growth. Aries, the Tower is one of the most important cards in the tarot for your sign, because you are a sign that is wired for new beginnings, and the Tower is what creates them. The growth invitation this week is about your relationship with what you cannot control. Aries is an initiator, a starter, a force. The Tower asks, what happens when something starts that you didn't initiate? Can you trust that disruption initiated by the universe is just as purposeful as disruption you initiate yourself? The answer, for you this week, is yes. Something is clearing. Something that looked like stability was actually stagnation. The lightning knows what it's doing. Saturn in your sign all year has been building your capacity for intentional discipline. This week, the Tower tests whether that discipline is real, whether it can hold under pressure, or whether it's a performance that falls when the stakes rise. you will find that you are stronger than the storm. You've been building for this without knowing it. The last quarter moon invites you to release the need to have your life look a certain way to other people. The version of yourself you've been performing, the one that's fine, that's handling it, that's always a step ahead, is not the only version worth being. Let someone see you in the middle of the tower moment. Let yourself be seen in process. That is where real connection begins. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Aries this week is reactivity. The tower energy, combined with Mercury's quick-fire ingress into Gemini, can create a hair-trigger quality, where something surprises you, your nervous system spikes, and you respond before you've actually processed what happened. This pattern can turn manageable disruptions into unnecessary conflicts. Before you respond to anything this week that feels destabilizing, take one complete breath. Ask, is this a tower moment, something I need to act on immediately, or is this a tower feeling, something I'm processing, and action can wait? That distinction can save relationships, professional standing, and your own nervous system. Watch also for a tendency to burn it all down as a form of control. When Aries feels out of control, the impulse is sometimes to make a dramatic move, to end something preemptively, to light the fire yourself before someone else can. Resist this impulse. Not everything that's shaking needs to be demolished. Finally, Mercury in Gemini can make you feel scattered, pulled in 10 directions by 10 interesting conversations. Protect your focus. Not every idea that arrives this week needs to become a plan. Closing. Aries, the tower rarely comes for people who weren't ready for what's on the other side of it. You are ready. You've been building the version of yourself who can stand in a moment like this and choose with clarity rather than collapse with fear. This week confirms that. Let what needs to fall, fall. Trust what remains. Begin again from there, which, as you know better than any sign in the zodiac, is exactly what you were made to do. Your affirmation for this week, I trust the disruption. What falls was blocking the view. I am built for what comes next. If this reading found you, stay with Starspoken. Subscribe every week, every sign, readings built with the depth and honesty you deserve. Leave a comment. What tower moment are you walking through right now? I want to know. Until next week, Aries. Lightning knows what it's doing. So do you. Taurus. Earth sign. Fixed force. The one who knows that the most radical act is to stay, to root deeply, to tend carefully, to build something that outlasts the season that inspired it. This is the last full week of your season, Taurus. On May 20th, the sun moves into Gemini, and the spotlight shifts. But before it does, this week hands you something singular and beautiful. The chance to harvest what you've tended all month. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, and for Taurus this activates your second house of money, of material resources, of the concrete value of your effort in the world. Mercury in Gemini in your second house is quick, mercurial financial energy. Things move faster than Taurus usually prefers. Deals surface and close in the same breath. Information arrives that changes your financial picture. Pay attention early in the week. What you learn before midweek may require a timely decision. The last quarter moon arrives in Aquarius on May 18th, and for Taurus this falls in your 10th house of career, public life, and long-term ambition. Last quarter moons are about releasing, and in your 10th house, this is an invitation to let go of a professional identity, expectation, or strategy that has been quietly limiting you. Something in your career story needs to be updated. The version of what you're building doesn't look quite like you imagined it would, and that's not failure. That's growth asking to be acknowledged. Uranus continues its slow transit through your sign, Taurus, and all year it has been doing the thing Taurus hates most, surprising you. This week, under the waning moon and with Mercury crackling in Gemini, a Uranian moment arrives, a sudden shift in plans, a piece of unexpected news, something that requires you to adapt faster than you're comfortable adapting. You will adapt. You always do, slowly, thoroughly, and with more grace than you give yourself credit for. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Taurus this week is Four of Pentacles reversed. In its upright position, the Four of Pentacles shows a figure clutching 4 coins, holding tightly, protecting what he has, arms around his resources like a fortress. In reverse, those coins begin to loosen. The grip softens. What was held with white knuckles begins to be offered with open hands. For Taurus in love this week, this is the card of emotional release, the moment when you finally stop protecting yourself from the very thing you want most. You are a sign that loves deeply and guards its heart with impressive, sometimes exhausting, fortitude. The reversed Four of Pentacles asks, what would it feel like to stop managing this relationship so carefully? To stop calculating what you give versus what you receive? To simply be present with someone without keeping score? For those in relationships, generosity is the medicine this week. Not material generosity, emotional generosity. Letting your partner be seen. Letting yourself be seen. Releasing the need to control how the relationship looks or progresses. For those who are single, this card reversed is an invitation to examine what you've been holding back from potential connections. Is the fortress protecting you or imprisoning you? This week, let down one wall. Not all of them, one. See what enters. Your action step this week. Choose one area of a relationship where you've been withholding your time, your vulnerability, your appreciation, and give it freely, without expectation of return. Money and career. Taurus, this is a week of financial fluidity, and for a sign that prefers financial stability, that can feel destabilizing. But Mercury in Gemini in your 2nd house moves money quickly, and the key is to stay informed rather than stay still. The Four of Pentacles reversed has a direct financial message for you. If you've been hoarding resources out of fear, sitting on money you could be investing, skills you could be sharing, opportunities you've been hesitant to pursue because they feel uncertain, this week asks you to loosen your grip. Abundance doesn't come from holding tightly. It comes from the right flow, knowing what to keep and what to release, what to invest and what to let go. Taurus is one of the most financially capable signs in the zodiac. Trust that capacity. It doesn't require the grip to stay intact. The last quarter moon in your career house on May 18th asks, what professional story are you still telling about yourself that isn't true anymore? Are you still presenting as someone who needs to prove their value when you've already proven it? Are you undercharging out of habit when the market would support something different? This week, audit your professional self-image as carefully as you would a balance sheet. What needs to be updated? Health and energy. Taurus, you are in the final days of your season, and your body knows it. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes at the end of a creative cycle, and you may feel it this week. Not the exhaustion of doing too much, but the quiet depletion of a season that has asked a great deal of you. Honor it. You don't need to push through the last week of Taurus season with the same intensity you brought to the first. Taurus rules the throat, the neck, and the thyroid, the body's governors of voice and vitality. This week, pay attention to what you're saying and how it's costing you. Taurus can carry enormous amounts of unspoken tension in the neck and jaw. Massage, heat, and slow exhalation are your allies. The reversed Four of Pentacles has a physical invitation, release. If you've been clenching, physically, emotionally, habitually, this week's energy actively supports letting go. Restorative yoga. Long baths. Sleep that you actually let be restful rather than treating like a task to complete. As Taurus season closes, begin to prepare your body for the faster, more social energy of Gemini. More movement. More hydration. More air. Personal growth. Taurus, the deepest growth invitation of this week is about your relationship with control. The Four of Pentacles reversed is not a card of loss, it is a card of trust. The loosened grip is not carelessness, it is the recognition that you have built something strong enough that you no longer need to white-knuckle it. The season you've just moved through has been a season of building. Of tending. Of making sure the foundation was solid. You've done that work. This week, the invitation is to trust the work, to let it stand without your constant supervision, to see whether what you've built can hold itself. It can. Taurus at its most evolved is not the sign that clings to the known, it is the sign that has learned to distinguish between rootedness and rigidity, between stability and stagnation. This week asks you to practice that distinction consciously. What are you holding on to that is actually holding you back? Not the things that ground you, those are worth keeping. The things that merely feel familiar. The patterns, the relationships, the self-definitions that are comfortable precisely because they don't require anything new of you. The last week of your season is the right time to release what Gemini season will no longer have room for. Pack light. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Taurus this week is resistance to the pace of change Mercury in Gemini brings. Mercury in Gemini is fast, chatty, mercurial, and nonlinear, the opposite of how Taurus naturally processes information. Things may feel like they're moving too quickly, decisions may feel underbaked, conversations may feel scattered. The temptation will be to dig in your heels and wait for the pace to slow to something more comfortable. It won't slow this week. Your job is not to match Mercury's speed, but to stay grounded at your own pace while not missing what's moving. Watch also for financial impulsivity, which the reversed Four of Pentacles can sometimes indicate. The grip loosens and everything loosens, including discernment. Releasing the hoarding doesn't mean releasing the judgment. Spend and invest this week from your values, not from a sudden feeling of liberation. Finally, as your season closes, there may be some grief in that, the quiet acknowledgement that another cycle is ending. Let yourself feel it. Taurus doesn't need to be stoic about time passing. Honoring endings is how you build the capacity for beginnings. Closing. Taurus, you have held things together with extraordinary grace this season. You have been the ground that others have stood on. You have been the slow, steady force that makes the long game possible. This week, the season honors you with a closing gift, the freedom to let go of what you've been gripping, the wisdom to release what the next chapter doesn't require, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that the work was real. Your affirmation for this week: I trust what I have built. I release what I've outgrown. My hands are open, and something better is arriving. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and keep coming back, every week, every sign, every card drawn with intention. Leave a comment. What have you been holding on to that you're finally ready to release? I want to know. Until next week, Taurus. The season is turning. You are ready for what comes next. Gemini. Air sign. Mutable force. The one who can hold two truths at once, who moves between worlds like air moves between open windows, curious, quick, impossible to pin down, and more perceptive than anyone realizes. Your season is 1 week away. And this week, the cosmos lights the runway. Mercury, your ruling planet, enters your sign on May 13th. Feel that. Your ruler, the planet of mind and communication and connection, comes home. Thoughts that have been sluggish suddenly stream. Conversations that have been stalled suddenly spark. A part of you that has been waiting, patiently, and with some effort, is released back into its natural element. When Mercury is in Gemini, the world tilts in your direction. Information flows toward you. The right people appear. The words that couldn't quite find their shape crystallize suddenly, fully formed, as if they were always there and you just needed the right moment to hear them. This is that moment. The waning moon continues this week, moving through its last quarter phase on May 18th in Aquarius. For Gemini, this illuminates your 9th house of philosophy, of travel, of the beliefs that have been quietly running your life underneath all the surface activity. Last quarter moons ask for release, and in your 9th house, this is the invitation to release a belief that has been limiting you. Not a casual preference, not a habit, a belief. Something you've accepted as fundamentally true about how life works, that turns out to be smaller than who you've become. With your season approaching and Mercury already home, this week is a threshold moment. You are standing between the chapter ending and the one beginning. The waning moon is doing the clearing. Your ruler is lighting the path. Step through. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Gemini this week is the Lovers. This is your card. The archetype that holds the tension you've always lived inside, the pull between two paths, two people, two versions of yourself, and asks you to choose the one that is most aligned with who you actually are, not who you've been performing yourself to be. The Lovers is not primarily a romance card, though it speaks powerfully to romantic love. It is a card of sacred alignment, the moment when the choice you make reflects your deepest truth rather than your most convenient story. For Gemini in love this week, Mercury coming home means conversations that have been circling the real thing can finally land on it. You are known for speaking around the center of something, deflecting with wit, pivoting with charm, offering the interesting angle rather than the vulnerable truth. This week, the Lovers asks for the truth. Just the truth. Without the clever frame around it. For those in relationships, there is a choice this week. It may be a conversation that needs to happen, a direction that needs to be decided, a commitment that needs to be made or renegotiated. The Lovers doesn't guarantee the outcome, it guarantees that the choice you make from authentic alignment will be the right one. For those who are single, the Lovers this week may appear as a person who makes you feel genuinely seen, or as a moment of falling more deeply in love with your own life and what it's becoming. Both are exactly right. Your action step this week, ask yourself which version of your life you are choosing, the one that looks right, or the one that feels true. Then choose the true one. Money and career. Gemini, Mercury in your own sign makes this one of your most mentally agile weeks of the year, and that translates directly into professional opportunity. Your capacity for connection, for language, for spinning an idea into something a room full of people can understand, these are superpowers, and they are running at full power this week. Pitch the thing. Send the proposal. Make the phone call you've been rehearsing. The words are there. Use them. The Lovers in a career context asks a deeper question. Are you doing work that is in alignment with what you actually value, or work that is aligned with what other people expect of you? Gemini is capable of adapting to almost any professional environment, which means Gemini is also uniquely at risk of spending years in a career that was designed for someone else's version of success. This week, as your season approaches and your ruler comes home, it's worth asking, is this the work I would choose if I were choosing from scratch? The last quarter moon in your 9th house of big picture vision on May 18th amplifies this question. A belief about what you're capable of, or what you deserve, may be ready to be released. What you replace it with, in the new lunar cycle beginning next week, will shape the direction of your professional life for months. Health and energy. Gemini, you rule the lungs, the hands, and the nervous system, and this week, with Mercury in your sign and your season approaching, all three are likely to run hot. The gift, mental sharpness, quick reflexes, a feeling of being switched on and alive to possibility. The challenge, the inability to slow down, the scattered quality that comes when too many frequencies are transmitting at once. Breathwork is your medicine this week. Literally. Long, slow, deliberate exhales that activate the parasympathetic nervous system and bring the scattered brilliance back to a single point. Box breathing in the morning before the day starts. Slow walks where you are not also listening to a podcast or planning your next 3 conversations. Your hands and wrists, which Gemini often carries tension in, deserve attention this week. If you're typing more than usual, and with Mercury home, you probably are, stretch and roll your wrists regularly. The waning moon invites rest. Not because you'll want to, but because what comes next week requires you to arrive replenished. This is the inhale before Gemini season exhales everything it has been building. Personal growth. Gemini, your most profound growth invitation this week is about integration, about bringing the two halves of yourself into genuine alignment rather than managing the gap between them. You are the sign of duality. And for most of your life, you have lived that duality as a creative tension, the part of you that wants to be known versus the part that wants to stay free, the part that wants depth versus the part that wants breadth, the part that is ready to commit versus the part that always has one eye on the door. The Lovers doesn't ask you to resolve this tension. It asks you to make a conscious, authentic choice within it. To stop letting the indecision be a decision by default. To take responsibility for what you actually want, and to stop letting the part of you that is afraid of getting it wrong be the loudest voice in the room. Mercury entering Gemini this week is the return of your full cognitive power, the version of your mind that sees connections others miss, that builds bridges between ideas, that can hold complexity without collapsing it into simplicity. Use that power this week not just outwardly, but inwardly. Turn the Gemini perception toward your own life. What do you see when you look clearly? Choose that. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Gemini this week is scattered energy. Mercury in your sign is powerful, and with the Lovers drawing you toward important choices, and the waning moon asking you to release an outdated belief, and your season arriving next week, there is a lot happening. The temptation is to touch all of it lightly rather than engaging any of it deeply. Resist the skim. This is a week that rewards depth. The Lovers is a card of singular choice, not of juggling multiple options indefinitely. Pick the conversation, the decision, the relationship, the direction that matters most, and give it your full mind rather than a fraction of it. Watch also for Gemini's tendency towards self-talk that cycles without landing anywhere, the internal conversation that analyzes every angle of a choice without ever actually making it. At some point this week, you will need to decide. Decision is not the absence of doubt, it is moving in spite of it. Finally, as Mercury comes home, be careful about saying more than is necessary. Sometimes the instinct to fill silence with language is a deflection from the one thing that most needs to be said. This week, quality of communication over quantity of it. Closing. Gemini, you have been waiting for this week without knowing it. Your ruler is home. Your season is coming. The sky is clearing space for what you're about to become. The Lovers asks you to step into that space with intentionality, to choose your life rather than drift into it, to speak your truth rather than perform a more comfortable version of it, to let yourself be fully seen in the power of what you actually are. Your affirmation for this week: I choose from the center of who I am. My truth is clear. My season begins now. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe every week, every sign, every card drawn with care. Comment your sign below and let me know, what is the choice you've been circling? This week, it's time. Until next week, Gemini. Mercury is home. Welcome back. Cancer. Water sign. Cardinal force. The one who feels the world before the world announces itself, who carries the capacity for love so deep it sometimes frightens even you, who leads not with logic but with the quiet intelligence of the heart. This week, the cosmos quiets down specifically so you can hear what's been speaking beneath the surface. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 12th house of hidden things, of what happens just below the threshold of conscious awareness, of the part of your mind that is always processing what the rest of you hasn't caught up to yet. Mercury in your 12th house is not the place for fast, outward communication. It is the place for private writing, for inner dialogue, for paying attention to the subtle signals your intuition has been sending you that the noise of recent weeks has obscured. Dreams this week may be vivid and instructive. Journaling before you look at your phone in the morning may reveal something important. Slow down the beginning of each day this week, Cancer. There is intelligence waiting for you in the quiet that the busy hours will not deliver. Jupiter in Cancer continues to expand the energy of your sign all year, a genuine gift that arrives once every 12 years. This week, Jupiter's expansive warmth meets the waning moon's invitation to release, creating a powerful combination, the clearing of what's been in the way, and the readiness of something larger to move in. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th falls in your 8th house of transformation, of shared resources, of deep psychological material. This is a potent moment for letting go of something that has lived in the shadows of your awareness, an old grief, a resentment you've been nurturing with more loyalty than it deserves, a fear about intimacy or loss that has been running quietly in the background of your choices. The full moon in Scorpio last week opened the door. This week, you walk through it. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Cancer this week is the High Priestess. She sits between two pillars, one light, one dark, and she is not choosing between them. She holds both. She knows that the deepest truths live in the space between opposites, in the place that cannot be argued into or reasoned out of. She knows what she knows. And she is willing to trust it. This is your card, Cancer, though you may not always claim it. You have always had access to a level of relational intelligence that operates beyond logic. You know when something is off in a relationship before any evidence presents itself. You know when someone is telling you the partial truth. You know when a connection is alive and when it's become something you're maintaining out of loyalty to who you used to be. This week, the High Priestess asks you to trust what you know, without demanding proof, without waiting for external confirmation, without making yourself small enough to fit into someone else's version of what's happening. For those in relationships, there is something you sense this week that hasn't been said yet. Trust it. Not as accusation, not as drama, but as a quiet piece of information that deserves your attention. For those who are single, the High Priestess is the invitation to cultivate your own company this week. Not out of loneliness, but out of self-knowledge. The person you're becoming, the one Jupiter in Cancer is expanding, deserves a relationship that can meet that fuller version of you. Your action step this week, journal what you know. Not what you think, not what you hope, what you actually know. The High Priestess speaks most clearly on paper. Money and career. Cancer, Mercury in your 12th house is not the week for bold public professional moves. It is the week for strategic thinking that happens in private. The High Priestess in a professional context is the card of what you know that others don't, your access to information, your capacity to sense the undercurrents of an organization, your quiet accumulation of wisdom that doesn't always get credited but always gets used. This week, that knowledge is an asset. Don't give it all away for free. Jupiter in Cancer continues to open professional doors that would not have opened a year ago. You may not see the doors yet, but they are opening. What's required of you is not aggressive pursuit but genuine readiness. Are you prepared for the professional opportunity that your Jupiter transit is building toward? Are you sharpening the skills, building the body of work, cultivating the relationships that will make the yes possible when it arrives? The last quarter moon in your 8th house on May 18th invites a financial review, specifically around shared money, debts, contracts, financial partnerships, inheritances, or any financial arrangement you share with another person. This is the moment to look honestly at what's working and what isn't. Health and energy. Cancer, you rule the stomach, the chest, and the emotional body, and this week, the invitation is to be particularly gentle with all three. The Mercury 12th house combination can activate a kind of low-level anxiety that doesn't have a specific object, a floating worry, a restlessness that can't quite name itself. The antidote is not to analyze it but to move it. Slow water-based exercise, swimming, a long shower, time near the ocean or a lake or a river if you have access. Water regulates Cancer's emotional nervous system in ways nothing else quite matches. Eating well and eating intentionally is important this week. Cancer rules the stomach and has a powerful gut-mind connection. What you eat affects your emotional processing this week more than usual. Warm, nourishing foods over cold unprocessed ones. Eat slowly. Eat with presence. The High Priestess is associated with deep rest, with the kind of sleep that goes somewhere meaningful. This week, protect your sleep fiercely. The 12th house is the house of rest and restoration, and Mercury there means your mind is doing important work in the night hours. Let it. Personal growth. Cancer, your deepest growth invitation this week is towards self-trust. You are a sign that often seeks external validation before you're willing to believe what you already know internally. You check in with the people you love, not because you don't have the answer, but because you're not sure your answer should be trusted. You have spent more hours of your life second-guessing your own perceptions than almost any other sign. The High Priestess is here to tell you, you know. You have always known. The intuition you've been apologizing for, softening, translating into something more reasonable and palatable, that intuition is accurate. Not always literally, but always directionally. The feeling that something was off was usually correct. The sense that a connection wasn't what it appeared to be, usually correct. The quiet knowing that a door was about to open, usually correct. This week, practice trusting your first knowing before you seek external confirmation. Not stubbornly, with openness to new information. But from the starting point of your own perception, rather than the ending point of everyone else's. Jupiter in Cancer is expanding your capacity for self-knowledge this year. But capacity requires practice. This week is the practice. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Cancer this week is emotional flooding. When the waning moon and the 12th house combination opens channels that have been closed for a while, the resulting emotional flow can be overwhelming. This is not a crisis. It is a clearing. But it requires you to move through it consciously rather than either shutting it down or being swept away by it. The middle path this week is to feel what comes up, name it, and let it move. Journaling, therapy, honest conversation with someone you deeply trust, all of these help the emotional material flow through rather than accumulate. Watch also for the temptation to withdraw from connection this week in the name of self-protection. Mercury in your 12th house and the High Priestess can create a preference for solitude that is sometimes genuine restoration and sometimes isolation in disguise. Know the difference. You need some time alone this week, not all of it. Finally, be careful about making major decisions from the emotional space of the last quarter moon on May 18th. The energy is powerful, but it's the energy of release, not the energy of beginning. Let what needs to end, end. Begin when the new moon arrives. Closing. Cancer, this is a week of deep listening, and you are one of the great listeners of the zodiac, though you rarely hear that. The High Priestess is you at your most knowing, your most perceptive, your most fully yourself. She doesn't explain herself. She doesn't justify what she knows. She trusts it, and she moves from it. This week, be her. Your affirmation for this week: I trust what I know. My intuition is accurate. I move from the center of my own wisdom. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe every week, every sign, read with intention. Comment below, what is your intuition telling you right now that you haven't let yourself fully trust? This week is the week to listen. Until next week, Cancer. The High Priestess is within you. Trust her. Leo. Fire sign. Fixed force. The one who was built to shine, not because the spotlight was given to you, but because you learned, through years of living in your own fire, that the light you carry is not performance. It is presence. This week, the cosmos asks you to demonstrate the difference. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, lighting up your 11th house of community, of friendship, of the circles and collectives you choose to belong to. Mercury in Gemini in your 11th house is social electricity. Conversations spark across platforms and in person, your network activates, a friend or collaborator surfaces with an idea that opens something you hadn't considered. Stay available this week for the unexpected connection. The person who reaches out sideways, not the one you were waiting for, may be the one who changes the trajectory. The waning moon moves toward its last quarter in Aquarius on May 18th, falling in your 7th house of partnership, of one-on-one relationships, of the mirror that other people hold up so you can see yourself more clearly. Last quarter moons in the 7th house are powerful and sometimes uncomfortable. They ask you to release a pattern, a projection, or an expectation in your most important relationships. What have you been waiting for a partner, romantic, professional, or creative, to give you that you actually need to give yourself? Jupiter continues its transit through Cancer, quietly activating your 12th house of rest, of deep inner work, of what happens in you when the performance is over and you are simply, privately yourself. This is an unusual Jupiter transit for Leo, one that grows you not through expansion outward but through depth inward. The strength you build this year will be invisible to others and irreplaceable for you. Sun in Taurus through May 20th lights up your 10th house of career and public legacy. The last week of this transit is the moment to plant something visible, a professional move, a public statement, a step toward the work that you want to be remembered for. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Leo this week is Strength. Not the strength of force, not the lion tamed by domination. The strength of the figure who leans gently toward the lion, whose hand rests soft against his jaw, whose expression is completely at peace. She is not afraid of the lion. She is not trying to defeat it. She is simply more sovereign than its wildness, and the lion knows it. For Leo in love this week, strength arrives as an invitation to lead your relationships with grace rather than drama, to bring the full power of who you are to the people you love without needing them to acknowledge it in every moment. Leo sometimes loves loudly. Sometimes the love becomes a performance of love, an expectation that others will witness and celebrate it at the same volume at which it is offered. Strength, this week, asks for something quieter. More patient. The kind of love that can hold space for another person's difficulty without making their struggle about your generosity in responding to it. For those in relationships, your partner may need something from you this week that isn't dramatic, just consistent, calm, fully present. Can you provide that without needing acknowledgement? That is the strength invitation. For those who are single, the quality that attracts this week is not your brightness, it is your steadiness. The person who is drawn to who you are when no one is watching is the one worth keeping. Your action step this week: offer love to someone this week without asking for anything in return, not acknowledgement, not reciprocity, not even a thank you. Let the giving be complete in itself. Money and career. Leo, Mercury in your 11th house makes this a week for professional networking that feels natural rather than forced. The right conversation happens at the right moment. An introduction arrives. Someone who knows what you're building mentions it to someone who needs exactly what you're offering. Strength in your professional life this week is about sustained performance under pressure, the kind of quiet, disciplined excellence that builds a reputation over time rather than the flash of a single impressive moment. You are capable of both, Leo. But what builds the career that lasts is the former. The last quarter moon in your 7th house on May 18th brings the professional partnership dimension forward. If you are in a creative or business partnership, now is the time for honest assessment. What is the dynamic, and does it reflect what both parties actually bring to the table? What expectations have been projected onto the relationship that haven't been spoken about? The Sun in your 10th house through May 20th is your final push in Taurus season to make something visible. Send the email. Post the work. Reach out to the person in a position to advance what you're building. This window closes next week. use it intentionally. Health and energy. Leo rules the heart and spine, the seat of courage and the axis of standing upright, and both deserve your care this week. Strength as a card is associated with the physical body held in integrity, aligned, powerful, graceful. This week, pay attention to how you're carrying yourself physically. Are you hunched under the weight of something you're not acknowledging? Are you holding tension in your chest or upper back that is the body's translation of something your mind hasn't named yet? Movement this week should be intentional rather than punishing. Leo tends toward either intense physical discipline or complete physical collapse. This week, find the middle, consistent, enjoyable movement that honors the body as an ally rather than a vehicle to be pushed. The 12th house Jupiter transit for Leo has a health dimension. This is the year to build restorative practices that aren't visible or performative. Not the workout you post, the one that actually restores you. Not the wellness routine that looks good, the one that works. Rest deeply on the nights around the last quarter moon. Your heart works hard. This week, let it be held. Personal growth. Leo, strength and personal growth is the card of inner sovereignty, the capacity to be fully yourself, in your full power, without requiring the validation of the audience to make it real. This is one of the deepest growth edges for Leo, learning that the light doesn't need to be reflected back to be real. You shine, and sometimes no one is looking, and sometimes people are looking and don't say so, and sometimes they say the wrong thing, and none of that changes what you actually are. The Jupiter transit through your 12th house this year is building something in you that will not be publicly visible until next year or beyond, a reservoir of inner strength that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This week is a moment in that building. The work is invisible. The results are permanent. Strength also speaks to Leo's relationship with its own shadow, the parts of yourself that feel unglamorous, the emotions that don't photograph well, the insecurities that persist despite all evidence of your capability. This week, make room for all of it. The lion and the woman who soothes him are both within you. They are not in conflict. They are in conversation. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Leo this week is ego. Not in the pejorative sense, but in the technical one. The ego is the part of the self that needs the external world to confirm its existence. And this week, with strength asking for quiet grace and the waning moon releasing old patterns in your partnership house, the ego may feel threatened. When the ego feels threatened, Leo's response can be to perform more loudly, to demand more acknowledgement, to create drama in relationships as a way of forcing engagement. Resist this impulse. The energy of this week will not reward it. What it will reward is the steady, generous, internally sourced power of strength, the Leo who doesn't need the room to know they've entered it. Watch also for a tendency to overextend in the 11th house energy of Mercury in Gemini, saying yes to every social opportunity, every collaboration, every invitation because the energy is high and the options are exciting. Choose where to put your attention. Not every connection is a resonant one. Closing. Leo, strength is one of the most beautiful cards in the tarot, and it belongs to you this week. Not because you have to earn it. Because you've already done the earning. You have walked through fire this year, quietly, privately, with more grace than anyone could see. This week, the card is naming what you've become. Your affirmation for this week: my strength does not need a stage. My power is real whether or not it is witnessed. I lead from love, and love is enough. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and let the cards find you every week. Leave a comment. Where in your life are you being called to lead with grace instead of force? I want to hear it. Until next week, Leo. The lion and the light are both you. Virgo. Earth sign. Mutable force. The one who sees what everyone else misses, the detail in the corner of the painting, the error in the third paragraph, the subtle shift in someone's tone that announces a change 3 conversations before it becomes visible to anyone else. This week, that perceptiveness is turned toward balance, not the balance of a scale holding perfectly still, but the active, dynamic balance of a figure walking a narrow path, arms slightly out, adjusting continuously, making it look effortless because the adjustment is constant. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 10th house of career, of public life, of the professional legacy you are actively building. Mercury in Gemini in your career house is sharp, communicative, and fast-moving. Ideas that serve your professional goals arrive in quick succession, and the capacity to articulate your value to the right people is at a seasonal high. This week is an excellent moment to be visible. To speak up in the room. To put forward the idea, the proposal, the version of yourself that doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. You've been doing invisible work for a long time, Virgo. This week, let some of it surface. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th touches your 6th house of daily rhythms, of health and service, of the habits that structure your ordinary days. This is familiar Virgo territory, and the question the last quarter moon asks of you here is specific. Which habits are you maintaining out of discipline and which ones are you maintaining out of anxiety? The distinction matters. Both can look identical from the outside. Only you know the difference. With the full moon in Scorpio behind you and Mercury in your career house ahead, this week is a transition point, from the deep internal work of the past 2 weeks to the outward, visible momentum of Gemini season. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Virgo this week is Temperance. The figure in Temperance stands with 1 foot on land and 1 in water, neither fully in one element nor the other, and pours liquid between 2 cups in an eternal, steady flow. Not losing a drop. Not forcing the pour. Trusting the process of moving between states. For Virgo in love this week, Temperance is the invitation to stop trying to perfect the relationship and start trusting the process of it. Virgo loves with extraordinary care and attention. You notice everything, every shift in mood, every small withdrawal, every place where the connection could be optimized. And while this perceptiveness is a gift, it can also become a form of control, an attempt to maintain the relationship at a level of perfection that no actual, living, breathing relationship can sustain. Temperance asks for patience. For the willingness to be in the process of loving someone rather than arriving at the finished product of a perfected connection. Love is the ongoing pour between 2 cups, not the moment when both cups are finally, permanently full. For those in relationships, this week, practice loving what is actually in front of you rather than the ideal version you've been tending in your mind. Your partner is a person, not a project. For those who are single, Temperance asks you to trust that the right connection will arrive in the right time, and that the preparing you're doing now, the growing, the clarifying of what you actually want, is the most important work. Your action step this week: choose patience in one place where you've been choosing criticism. Notice what shifts. Money and career. Virgo, Mercury in your 10th house is the professional spotlight of your year, and this week it shines. The ability to communicate your expertise clearly and compellingly, one of your most underutilized gifts, is at its peak. Temperance in professional life is about sustainable pacing, about refusing to burn out in service of a goal that will simply generate the next goal. Virgo can run at high efficiency for extended periods, and the body and nervous system pay for it in ways the spreadsheet doesn't capture. This week, Mercury in Gemini may bring more professional opportunities than you can realistically say yes to. Choose. Prioritize. Not everything that's interesting is necessary. The financial energy of the week is steady and practical, appropriate for a last quarter moon week. This is not a moment for large financial moves. It is a moment for reviewing what is and isn't working and adjusting accordingly. The Virgo instinct for detailed financial management is an asset this week. Go through the numbers, update the budget, make sure the spreadsheet reflects reality rather than the version of reality you've been hoping for. Temperance also has a professional collaboration dimension, working well with others, finding the flow in a team, not doing everything yourself because you're not confident anyone else will do it correctly. This week, let someone help. Health and energy. Virgo, you rule the digestive system and the nervous system, and both are important this week. Temperance is fundamentally a health card. Balance, moderation, the right proportion of work and rest, nourishment and movement, social time and solitude. Virgo often knows exactly what balance looks like theoretically and then applies the theory to everyone except themselves. This week, apply it to yourself. The last quarter moon in your 6th house of daily health on May 18th is a perfect moment to release a health habit that has been punitive rather than nurturing, the workout routine you dread but maintain because you believe you have to, the dietary restriction you enforce out of anxiety rather than care, the sleep schedule you sacrifice to productivity that has narrowed from an edge into a wound. What does temperance look like in your physical life? Probably, slightly less of the things you're overdoing, slightly more of the things you're underallowing. More sleep. More water. Less self-criticism about the days when the routine doesn't happen. Mercury in Gemini can activate Virgo's already busy mind into overdrive. Protect your nervous system this week with deliberate quiet, 10 minutes of stillness before the day begins, phone off for 1 hour before bed, walks where you are simply walking. Personal growth. Virgo, temperance is the card of alchemy, the slow, patient, careful process of transforming one thing into another. Not overnight, not through dramatic rupture, but through the ongoing, steady work of integration. You are in the middle of an alchemical process this year, Virgo. The self that entered 2026 and the self that will close it are genuinely different, not in an obvious, visible way, but in the way that a material becomes something else through sustained, patient heat. You can feel it, even if you can't quite name it. The growth invitation of Temperance is to trust the process without demanding to see the result yet. Virgo's instinct is to assess progress at every step, to measure, to evaluate, to ask whether the trajectory is correct. This week, the card asks, what if you couldn't check yet? What if you just had to continue the work and trust that the transformation is happening even when you can't verify it? The last quarter moon in your 6th house is asking you to release a self-criticism that has outlived its usefulness. Not all self-criticism is bad. Virgo's discernment is one of your finest qualities. But some of what you've been carrying about yourself is not discernment. It is cruelty. And Temperance does not survive cruelty. It requires care. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Virgo this week is perfectionism applied to the wrong things. Temperance is a card of integration, not of optimization. But Virgo's instinct is always to optimize, and in a week when balance is the medicine, the temptation to achieve perfectly balanced balance is real. You may find yourself trying to do everything right this week, to be in perfect alignment, to embody temperance so thoroughly that the pursuit of it becomes its own imbalance. Let temperance be imperfect. That's the whole point. Watch also for the Mercury and Gemini scatteredness affecting your typically focused mind. If you find yourself with 17 tabs open across projects, sign out of everything and choose one thing. Virgo's gift is depth, not breadth. Don't let the Gemini energy pull you away from what you're actually building. The last quarter moon may activate some melancholy around what you haven't completed in Taurus season. Be careful about the story you tell about that. Completion is not the only measure. Some things that feel incomplete are still in process, which is exactly where they're supposed to be. Closing. Virgo, Temperance is the card that knows the difference between the work that builds you and the work that depletes you, and chooses accordingly, without guilt. This week, be that deliberate. Pour your energy where it flows. Trust the alchemy. Let the transformation continue at the pace that is true rather than the pace you've decided it should be. Your affirmation for this week: I trust the process. I am being transformed. I offer patience to myself and to what I'm building. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and return every week. Comment below, where in your life has patience turned out to be the right medicine? I want to know. Until next week, Virgo. Temperance is trust in motion. You are already practicing it. Libra. Air sign. Cardinal force. The one who has always understood that the world is more beautiful and more livable when it is approached with grace, with the willingness to see all sides, to seek the point of genuine equity, to build something together that neither person could build alone. This week, you are being called by your own name. A version of yourself you have been building toward is arriving. And you may not recognize her yet, but you will. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 9th house of belief, of philosophy, of the big questions that frame how you understand your place in the world. Mercury in your ninth house is an intellectually alive, expansive placement. Ideas arrive at the horizon rather than at the desk. This is a week for reading something that changes your mind. For a conversation that opens a door you didn't know was there. For a moment of understanding that makes the last several months make sense in a new way. The full moon in Scorpio last week may have illuminated something in your second house of self-worth, a recognition, perhaps uncomfortable, about how you've been valuing yourself. What was revealed? Don't look away from it this week. The revelation was not a wound. It was information. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th falls in your fifth house of creativity, of authentic self-expression, of joy for its own sake. Last quarter moons invite release, and in your fifth house, Libra, the invitation is specific. Release the version of your creative self that performs for approval. The art, the expression, the creative life that you have been editing to be more palatable, more moderate, more agreeable, it deserves to be heard in its full register. You have been quietly, patiently becoming something. This week, the becoming becomes visible. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Libra this week is Judgment. The Judgment card shows figures rising from their burial places, arms open, faces lifted toward a figure sounding a trumpet in the sky. This is not the harsh judgment of being found wanting, this is the moment of being called home to yourself. The trumpet is sounding your name. The only question is whether you're willing to rise. For Libra in love this week, Judgment is the card of the reckoning that leads to liberation. Something in your love life is completing a cycle, a pattern that has repeated across relationships, a way of being in love that was shaped by an older version of yourself, a story about what you deserve or what you're capable of receiving. Libra can love beautifully and can also, with equal skill, disappear into love, becoming whoever the relationship seems to need, adjusting, moderating, making yourself easier rather than truer. Judgment this week sounds the call back to yourself. Not away from love, toward it, from the foundation of who you actually are. For those in relationships, is this connection big enough for all of you? The you that is emerging, more certain, more clear, more willing to ask for what's real, does your relationship have room for her? For those who are single, Judgment is the awakening. The next chapter of your love life does not begin until you fully leave the last one. This week asks, are you out? Truly? Your action step this week. Name one thing you want in love that you have been too afraid to say you want. Write it down. Say it out loud to yourself. The first audience for your truth is always you. Money and career. Libra, Mercury in your ninth house opens the doors of opportunity that are located farther afield, in a different city, a different industry, a different philosophy of what your work could be. This is a week for expanding your professional vision. For reading about a field you've been circling. For reaching out to someone who is doing the kind of work you want to be doing in 5 years. For moving toward the bigger version of your career rather than optimizing the current one. Judgment in professional life is the card of the calling, the moment when you stop doing what you fell into and begin moving toward what you are actually here to do. This is rarely a sudden external event. More often it is a quiet internal recognition, This matters to me. I was built for this. I'm going to stop pretending otherwise. The last quarter moon in your 5th house of creativity on May 18th suggests that creative work and authentic self-expression may be more central to your professional path forward than you've allowed yourself to believe. Libra often undervalues its creative and aesthetic intelligence in favor of the more serious professional skills. Don't. Financially, this week is stable and appropriate for review rather than action. The Judgment energy is not about spending, it's about clarity. What would you invest in if you truly believed you were worth it? Health and energy. Libra, you rule the kidneys and the lower back, the parts of the body that process and eliminate what no longer serves, and that carry the weight of the whole system. Judgment as a health card is about what you've been carrying that needs to be released from the body, not just metaphorically, but physically. Stress that has become structural. Tension that has become habitual. The posture of someone who has been accommodating rather than expressing. Hydration is particularly important this week. Your kidneys need extra support when you're in a period of significant internal processing. Water, herbal teas, foods that support elimination and release. Your lower back may speak to you this week in the form of ache or tightness. This is often Libra's body asking, what are you still carrying that you could put down? Take it seriously. Gentle stretching, supported child's pose, restorative practices that tell the spine it doesn't have to hold everything alone. The 9th house Mercury activation means your mind is also running far and wide this week. Make sure your body comes along. Walks in nature, not just intellectual walks through ideas. Ground the expansion in flesh. Personal growth. Libra, Judgment is the most significant card in the major arcana for moments of genuine awakening, and this is one of those moments. Something is completing. Not ending in the sense of loss, but completing in the sense of wholeness, a cycle that has had a beginning, a middle, and is now arriving at its natural resolution. And you are standing at the threshold of the next cycle, which will be shaped by everything this one has taught you. The growth invitation of Judgment is radical self-honesty. Not the kind that is harsh and critical. Libra knows that kind intimately, and it doesn't serve. The kind that is clear and compassionate. Here is what was true, here is what changed, here is who I am now because of it. The version of yourself that Judgment is calling forward is the one that has integrated the last chapter, that has taken the lesson from the painful parts and the joy from the beautiful parts and synthesized them into a larger, more coherent sense of who you are and what you're here for. She is arriving. This week, let her come. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Libra this week is the old pattern of waiting for external permission to be who you've become. Judgment sounds the call, but the rising is yours to do. The card does not lift you. It calls you, and then it waits to see if you'll answer. Libra's beautiful sensitivity to others' needs and preferences can become, in its shadow, the habit of waiting for consensus before making a move. Waiting for someone else to validate the awakening before treating it as real. Waiting for the right moment, the right relationship, the right external condition, before becoming the person you already are. This week, the right moment is this one. The right condition is you, as you are, right now. Watch also for the intellectual energy of Mercury in the 9th house running away from the emotional work of judgment. Yes, there are fascinating ideas available this week. Yes, the mind wants to go there. But the invitation is not just intellectual, it is full-bodied, full spectrum. Let the awakening be physical, emotional, and spiritual, not just conceptual. Closing. Libra, you have been moving toward this week for longer than you know. Judgment sounds the trumpet. The rising is yours. The person on the other side of this awakening is the one you were always going to be, and she is more ready than you think. Your affirmation for this week: I am being called home to myself. I rise. I answer. I become. Stay with Starspoken. Every week, every sign, every card drawn with intention. Subscribe and let the readings find you. Comment below, what are you finally allowing yourself to become? Tell me. Until next week, Libra. The trumpet is sounding. Can you hear it? Scorpio. Water sign. Fixed force. The one who descends by instinct into the depths of feeling, of understanding, of the truth that lives underneath the truth everyone else is willing to speak, and emerges changed, carrying something that was not available at the surface. Last week's full moon was in your sign, Scorpio. In your own sky. Whatever was illuminated, the truth that surfaced, the conversation that finally happened, the feeling that broke through the surface after months of pressure, it was real. And it was necessary. This week, you integrate. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 8th house, which is your natural territory. The 8th house is the house of transformation, of shared resources, of psychological depth, of the things we inherit from the dead and the living. Mercury in Gemini moves quickly through this house, stirring conversations about money, about power, about what is actually shared between you and the people you're deeply entangled with. A financial discussion or negotiation may need to happen this week. A conversation about power dynamics in a significant relationship, where you are enmeshed, where boundaries are unclear, where the exchange is not equitable, may finally be possible to have with words rather than silence. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th falls in your 4th house of home, of roots, of the family systems, biological or chosen, that shaped how you move through the world. Last quarter moons ask for release, and in your 4th house, Scorpio, the release is deep, a pattern inherited from your family of origin, a way of navigating intimacy or conflict or safety that was built for a home that no longer exists. You are not what was done to you. This week, you get to act from that knowledge. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, your ruling planet, turns the lens of transformation inward, and for Scorpio, this year's Pluto retrograde season asks, what is the transformation happening in you, not just to you? Love and relationships. The tarot card for Scorpio this week is the Hanged Man. He is suspended. Upside down, one leg crossed, completely still, and his expression is not one of distress. It is one of surrender, of the deliberate choice to stop struggling against the position and discover what it reveals. For Scorpio in love this week, the Hanged Man is the post-full moon stillness. After the revelation, the illumination, the emotional intensity of last week, this week asks you to stop. To not immediately translate what was revealed into action. To let the new information rearrange itself inside you before you decide what to do with it. Scorpio's instinct after intense emotional experiences is to move, to respond, to act, to transform the energy into something decisive. But the Hanged Man asks for the willingness to be in the liminal space a little longer. Not forever. Just long enough to see what you couldn't see while you were in motion. What perspective does the upside-down view offer about your relationship? About what you've been prioritizing, about what you've been protecting at the expense of what you actually need. For those in relationships, this is a week of quiet processing rather than active conversation. If you spoke last week under the full moon, and many of you did, give the words time to settle before adding more. For those who are single, the Hanged Man is the surrender of the plan. The willingness to stop managing your romantic life and see what arrives when you're not forcing it. Your action step this week: practice conscious stillness for 15 minutes each day. No phone, no noise, no task. Just you, breathing, letting the new perspective arrive. Money and career. Scorpio, Mercury in your 8th house is a favorable transit for financial negotiations, for discussions about shared money, for the conversations about inheritances, debts, taxes, or financial partnerships that tend to feel charged and consequential, because they are. The Hanged Man in professional life is the pause before the pivot. Something in your career has been suspended, a decision not yet made, a project in limbo, a professional relationship in renegotiation. This week is not the week to force the resolution. The Hanged Man always reveals something during the suspension that makes the eventual decision more informed. Trust the delay. The timing will become clear. If there are financial negotiations related to shared money, debts, or contracts, Mercury in Gemini gives you the communication capacity to navigate them with skill. Use language precisely this week. Scorpio is capable of both extraordinary diplomatic precision and devastating truth-telling, and this week the former will serve you better than the latter in professional contexts. Pluto retrograde is a good time to audit where power has been imbalanced in professional arrangements. Not to confront immediately, to document, to understand, to know what you're walking into when the retrograde ends. Health and energy. Scorpio, you rule the reproductive system, the elimination system, and the energy of regeneration itself, and this week, all of those systems are in a natural phase of rest and restoration. The Hanged Man's energy is deeply physical, the body in suspension, in deliberate rest, in the pause between one kind of activity and the next. This is not the time to push your physical edge. It is the time to let your body recover from the intensity of recent weeks. The full moon in your sign last week may have left you feeling wrung out, even if the illumination was necessary and ultimately positive. The emotional and energetic expenditure of a full moon in your own sign is significant. Treat yourself like someone who has done important, demanding work, because you have. Sleep is the medicine this week. Long, dark, deep sleep with no alarm if at all possible on the weekend. Your body is doing important regenerative work in the night hours. Let it. The fourth house last quarter moon may bring some old emotional material up through the body, grief or old tension that was stored in the tissues. Bodywork, time in water, slow movement, these help the body complete what it's processing. Personal growth. Scorpio, the Hanged Man is one of the most misunderstood cards in the tarot, and for a sign that specializes in misunderstood depths, this feels fitting. The growth invitation of the Hanged Man is not patience in the passive sense. It is the active practice of changing your perspective by changing your orientation. By literally allowing the world to look different. By surrendering the control of knowing what comes next and experiencing the strange clarity that arrives in that surrender. Scorpio knows transformation. You've lived it so many times that it's almost a signature of your existence, the phoenix, the death and rebirth, the willingness to go into the dark because you've learned that the dark is not the end but the passage. This week's invitation is different from the usual Scorpionic intensity. It is not about going deeper into the darkness, it is about hanging in the in-between. Not underground, not above. Suspended. Discovering what that position reveals about your life that neither the dark nor the light could show you. What you see from the upside-down perspective this week may rearrange something important. Let it. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Scorpio this week is the impulse to act before the integration is complete. After a full moon in your sign, the temptation is to take the raw material of what was revealed and immediately weaponize it, to use the truth as leverage, to make moves while the energy is high, to act before you've actually absorbed what happened. The Hanged Man says, wait. Not because action is wrong. Because the action that comes after integration is categorically more powerful than the action that comes from reactivity. Watch also for the Pluto retrograde tendency to withdraw too completely, to go so far into your own depths this week that you become inaccessible to the people who matter to you. Scorpio's rich interior life is one of your greatest gifts. Disappearing into it without warning is one of your most confusing behaviors to the people who love you. Let someone know you're processing. That's all they need. The last quarter moon in your fourth house may activate old family wounds or inherited patterns. Notice them with curiosity rather than shame. They're not you, they're what you were given. You get to choose what to do with them from here. Closing. Scorpio, you emerged from the full moon in your sign carrying something important. This week, you integrate it. You let it rearrange you at the depth that only Scorpio can access, the level where transformation is not performance but actual, permanent change. The Hanged Man honors your willingness to be in the liminal. To not rush the knowing. To trust that what's being revealed in the stillness is worth the wait. Your affirmation for this week: I surrender the need to know what comes next. I trust the stillness. I am becoming in the in-between. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and let the weekly readings meet you wherever you are. Comment below, what are you being asked to surrender right now? I'm listening. Until next week, Scorpio. The stillness is not nothing. It is everything. Sagittarius. Fire sign. mutable force. The one who is always oriented toward the horizon, toward the next country, the next philosophy, the next question big enough to spend a year investigating, and who carries a particular and sometimes underestimated gift, the capacity to begin again with genuine enthusiasm every single time. This week, that capacity is activated in its fullest form. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, and for Sagittarius, this lands in your 7th house of partnership, of significant one-on-one relationships, of the mirror that the most important people in your life hold up so you can see parts of yourself you wouldn't find alone. Mercury in Gemini in your partnership house activates conversations that have been waiting. A partner, romantic, creative, professional, has something to say this week, and you have something to hear. Slow down enough to actually receive it rather than formulating your response while they're still speaking. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th falls in your 3rd house of communication, of learning, of the immediate environment you move through. Last quarter moons ask for release, and in your 3rd house, Sagittarius, this is the invitation to release a way of speaking, or not speaking, that has been getting in the way. The grand vision you carry needs a translation layer. The last quarter moon asks you to let go of the communication habit that bypasses the people closest to you in favor of the crowd. And now, the card. This week, Sagittarius, the card is the Fool, and you know this card in your bones. You've been the fool more times than you can count. This is not an insult. It is the highest compliment the tarot offers to someone who leads with faith. ## love and relationships. The tarot card for Sagittarius this week is the Fool. The Fool stands at the edge of a cliff, bag over one shoulder, face tilted toward the sky, about to step off into empty air. And the remarkable thing is, the step is not foolishness. It is faith. The Fool knows, at the level of bone, that the path appears when you take the step, not before. Last week, the wheel of fortune turned. Things shifted. Something in your life moved. A cycle completed, a new direction became visible, a change arrived that you may have been anticipating or that caught you entirely by surprise. The wheel turned, and this week, you stand at the new edge. The Fool says, step. For Sagittarius in love this week, the Fool is the energy of beginning something new with complete openness, without the armor of past experiences, without the protective distance that says, I've been disappointed before so I'll keep one eye on the exit. The Fool doesn't travel light because the pack is small, the Fool travels light because they trust the journey will provide. For those in relationships, is there something you've been holding back, a new level of vulnerability, a conversation that deepens the connection, an adventure you keep almost planning but never actually booking? The Fool says, book it. Have it. Start it. For those who are single, someone new may appear this week who catches you genuinely off guard. Don't perform your usual Sagittarian detachment. Let yourself be caught off guard. That's where the magic lives. Your action step this week *, take one step toward the thing you've been standing at the edge of. Just one. The path appears when you move. ## money and career. Sagittarius, The Fool in professional life is the beginning of a new professional chapter, which you may have already sensed is forming, even if its shape isn't fully visible yet. Mercury in your partnership house makes this an excellent week for professional collaborations, for conversations with agents, clients, or partners about what you're building together. The Fool brings openness to these conversations, the willingness to say, "I don't know exactly where this goes, and I'm interested in finding out together." Financially, the Fool is not the card of reckless spending, it is the card of not letting fear of risk prevent reasonable, faith-based investment. You have been sitting at the edge of something professionally, perhaps afraid that the step is too large, the outcome too uncertain, the leap too unverifiable. This week's card says the leap is smaller than it looks from the edge. The last quarter moon in your communication house on May 18th is a good moment to release a professional narrative that has been holding you back, the story you've been telling about why the next thing isn't possible, isn't ready, isn't the right time. The Fool doesn't tell that story. The Fool just goes. ## health and energy. Sagittarius, you rule the hips, thighs, and the sciatic nerve, the parts of the body that are built for movement and long-range travel. The Fool is kinetic energy, and your body will want to match it this week. Lean in. This is a week for physical movement that feels joyful rather than disciplinary, hiking, dancing, a spontaneous long walk somewhere you haven't been before. The Fool arrives at the edge of a cliff, Sagittarius arrives at the trailhead and keeps walking. The last quarter moon in your third house may bring a difficult communication, something said in the house of the Fool's beginning that needs to be received without reactivity. Breathe before you respond. ## closing. Sagittarius, the adventure is beginning. Not someday. Now. This week. The Fool is stepping off the cliff, and you recognize yourself in that figure because you've always been the one who trusted the step. Trust it again. The path is there. Your affirmation for this week *, I trust the beginning. I step into what I cannot yet see. The path appears when I move. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and come back every week, the cards are waiting. Leave a comment, what new beginning is calling you right now? Tell me where you're standing at the edge. Until next week, Sagittarius. The Fool doesn't look down. Neither do you. Capricorn, week of May 13th to 19th, 2026. Starspoken weekly reading. Capricorn. Earth sign. Cardinal force. The one who was built for the long game, who understands, at a cellular level, that the most meaningful things are not built quickly, that the mountain rewards the climber who respects its terrain, that patience is not the absence of ambition but its most disciplined expression. This week, something that has been cold begins to thaw. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 6th house of daily work, of health and routines, of the practical rhythms that structure your everyday life. Mercury in Gemini in your 6th house is nimble, adaptive work energy, the ability to handle multiple tasks quickly, to communicate in the moment of work rather than preparing formal communications, to be a more fluid and responsive version of your usually structured professional self. A solution to a problem that has been stubbornly resistant may arrive this week through quick, lateral thinking rather than through the methodical approach you would normally bring to it. Let yourself be quick this week. The Capricornian thoroughness isn't going anywhere. It can be applied after the creative insight. The last quarter moon in Aquarius on May 18th falls in your second house of money, of resources, of the material foundations of your security. Last quarter moons ask for release, and in your second house, Capricorn, this is the invitation to let go of a financial belief, or a story about scarcity, about what money means, about your relationship to security itself, that has been more limiting than protective. Capricorn builds security. This is one of your greatest gifts. And sometimes, the very skill that creates security becomes the anxiety that never lets you feel it. This week, the card arrives with news. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Capricorn this week is Five of Pentacles, reversed. The Five of Pentacles upright shows two figures in the cold and snow, passing a stained glass window that radiates warmth and light. They are suffering, cold, hungry, depleted, and they are so focused on their lack that they cannot see that the door beside the window is open. Help is there. They just haven't looked up. Reversed, those figures begin to look up. The door becomes visible. Someone extends a hand. The cold doesn't disappear immediately, but the isolation, the worst part of the Five of Pentacles, begins to break. For Capricorn in love this week, the reversed Five of Pentacles is the thaw. The willingness to accept help. To let someone in past the careful self-sufficiency you've been maintaining. To allow yourself to be supported, financially, emotionally, practically, by someone who actually wants to give it. Capricorn can fall into a love dynamic where you are always the capable one, the reliable one, the one who provides and endures and does not need. This protects you from vulnerability. It also keeps the depth of genuine intimacy at a careful distance. This week, let someone carry something for you. Not everything. One thing. Notice what it feels like to receive. For those who are single, the reversed Five of Pentacles suggests that a period of relational scarcity or loneliness is beginning to turn. The isolation is cracking. What you've been waiting for is closer than it appeared. Your action step this week ask for help. From a partner, a friend, a family member, one person, one specific request. Practice being receivable. Money and career. Capricorn, this is a significant week for financial recovery and reorientation. The Five of Pentacles reversed signals the beginning of emerging from a period of financial stress, of scarcity thinking, of the grinding awareness that not enough is not enough. This emergence is not dramatic, it is a degree of lightning, a door becoming visible, a conversation about resources that opens something that was closed. Mercury in your sixth house supports practical, work-related communication, finalizing details on a project, troubleshooting a workflow issue, having a necessary conversation with a colleague or manager that you've been postponing. Small actions taken this week create material results this month. The last quarter moon in your second house on May 18th is a powerful moment for financial release. Let go of a belief about what you're worth, what you can earn, what your financial ceiling is. Capricorn's discipline and longevity should translate into financial abundance over time. If the translation hasn't been happening, the belief in the way is the first thing to release. Saturn, your ruling planet, continues to move through Aries, testing your ability to build new structures before the old ones have fully solidified. This is uncomfortable for Capricorn. Trust that the foundations you've been laying are stronger than they look right now. Health and energy. Capricorn, you rule the bones, the joints, the teeth, and the skin, the structural systems of the body, the architecture that holds everything upright. The Five of Pentacles reversed, in health terms, is the beginning of recovery. If you've been depleted, physically, adrenally, emotionally, this week begins the turn. Not the full restoration, but the first real indicators of it. Warmth is the medicine. Not metaphorical warmth, literal warmth. The reversed Five of Pentacles brings these figures in from the cold. Warm baths. Hot nourishing soups. Time in sunlight if your climate allows it this week. Clothing that feels comforting rather than professional. Let your body be warm. If your joints or bones have been speaking to you, aching, stiff, resistant, this is the body's signal that the load has been too heavy and the rest too sparse. Capricorn carries more than is sustainable for longer than is healthy. This week, set something down. The sixth house Mercury transit supports health-related communication, a conversation with a doctor that you've been avoiding, a shift in a daily health routine, finally acting on something your body has been asking for. Personal growth. Capricorn, the deepest growth invitation of this week is about receiving. The Five of Pentacles reversed is not primarily a card of external rescue, it is a card of internal opening. The figures in the cold don't thaw because someone pries them open. They thaw because something shifts in their own orientation, they look up, they see the door, they choose to move toward warmth rather than remaining in the cold familiar. The growth question for you this week: what would you allow into your life if you truly believed you deserved it? Not earned it, deserved it. The distinction is crucial. Capricorn understands earning. Deserving, receiving something simply because you are alive and human and worthy, is harder. This week, practice that. Not through grand gestures but through small allowances, the kindness you let in without immediately reciprocating, the rest you take without mentally ledgering it against the work you'll owe yourself afterward, the moment of warmth you receive without needing to have earned it first. The last quarter moon in your second house asks you to release the belief that more work always means more worth. You are worth something before the work begins. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Capricorn this week is the habitual preference for struggle over ease. The Five of Pentacles reversed brings the thaw, but Capricorn's relationship with difficulty is sometimes so entrenched that the warmth feels suspicious. If things are getting easier, am I not working hard enough? If help is available, does accepting it make me weak? These are the questions Capricorn's shadow asks, and they are not actually questions. They are defenses against receiving. This week, notice when you are choosing the harder path not because it's more effective but because effort is more familiar than ease. The card is not asking you to be lazy, it is asking you to let help in. Watch also for Mercury in Gemini creating scattered focus in your work routines. You are capable of deep, sustained effort. This week that effort may be interrupted more than usual. Build in buffers. Allow for the interruptions rather than fighting them. The last quarter moon may bring some financial anxiety to the surface before it releases. Sit with it briefly, name it, and let it go. The belief releasing is not the reality. Closing. Capricorn, this week the cold is breaking. Not all at once, that's not how Capricorn works, and that's not how real recovery works either. But the Five of Pentacles reversed is a genuine turning point. The door is visible. The warmth is available. And you are ready, finally, to look up and walk toward it. Your affirmation for this week: I allow warmth in. I deserve support. Something that was cold is beginning to thaw, and I move toward it without apology. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and let the weekly reading find you every week. Comment below, what is finally beginning to ease in your life? I want to hear about the thaw. Until next week, Capricorn. The mountain will wait. Today, come in from the cold. Aquarius, week of May 13th to 19th, 2026. Starspoken weekly reading. Aquarius. Air sign. Fixed force. The one who lives slightly ahead of the present moment, who sees what the world will need before the world knows it needs it, who is most comfortable in the future, and who carries the particular ache of someone who loves humanity deeply and sometimes struggles to feel at home within it. Last week, your card was the Star reversed, the hope with its wires crossed, the healing interrupted, the faith that was genuinely there but couldn't quite land. This week, the wires reconnect. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your fifth house of creativity, of authentic self-expression, of joy in its most uncomplicated form. Mercury in Gemini in your fifth house is creative electricity. Ideas for creative projects arrive in quick succession. Your voice finds its most distinctive register. A piece of work that has been stalled suddenly moves. This is an excellent week to create something and let it be seen. The last quarter moon in your own sign, Aquarius, arrives on May 18th. This is the last quarter moon in your first house, Aquarius. In the house of self, of how you show up in the world, of the version of yourself you present to everyone who meets you. Last quarter moons ask for release, and in your first house, this is the invitation to let go of an old self-definition. A way you described yourself, to others, that was true once and is now too small. Pluto retrograde continues in your sign, turning the transformation that has been happening around you into the transformation happening within you. The revolution is internal now. And that's not a smaller thing. That's the whole thing. And now, the card. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Aquarius this week is the Star, upright. Fully upright. Shining. Last week, the Star came reversed, hope present but obscured, healing real but blocked, light reaching toward you but not quite landing. Something was in the way. Something in you, or between you and what you needed, was still catching the signal wrong. This week, it clears. The star shows a figure kneeling at the water's edge, pouring water between earth and sky, surrounded by 8 stars, 1 large, 7 smaller. She is naked, which is the tarot's language for undefended, unprotected, genuinely open. She is pouring without counting. She is not rationing the water, she trusts there is enough. And the sky behind her is clear. For Aquarius in love this week, the star is the moment of genuine hope. Not hope as a performance, not the bright face you put on when someone asks how you're doing, the actual, private hope that something good is coming. That the chapter you've been in has been the necessary hard one, and what's next is lighter. Let yourself believe that this week. You've been guarding against hope as a form of protection, but guarded hope doesn't grow. Let it be undefended, at least this week. For those in relationships, a warmth that may have cooled is returning. Let it. Meet it halfway. For those who are single, the star is one of the most optimistic cards in the tarot for the arrival of love. Not tomorrow, but the conditions are clearing. Your action step this week *, write down what you genuinely hope for in love. Not what you think you can realistically get, what you actually hope for. Aquarius often edits hope down to probability before it's allowed to exist. This week, let it exist unedited. Money and career. Aquarius, Mercury in your 5th house makes this a week where creative, unconventional professional ideas carry more currency than usual. Your instinct for innovation, for seeing how things could work differently, better, more interestingly, is sharply activated. The star in professional terms is inspiration, the flash of vision that arrives after a period of difficulty, the clear view of what you're actually building when the clouds part. If you've been in the weeds of a professional challenge, this week you may suddenly see the larger shape of what you're creating, and that larger shape may be more promising than the close-up view has suggested. The last quarter moon in your 1st house on May 18th is an invitation to release a professional self-definition that has been constraining you. The way you describe your own expertise, the title you use, the category you put yourself in, the scope you say is what I do, may need to be updated. The Aquarius who entered this career chapter is not the Aquarius who is standing in it now. Name yourself accordingly. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius is asking deeper questions about professional power and purpose. This is not a week for those answers to finalize, it is a week for the hope, the star, to make the long-term vision visible enough to sustain the next period of work. Health and energy. Aquarius, you rule the circulatory system, the ankles, and the nervous system, the systems that move energy through the body and keep it grounded. The star is, at its core, a healing card, and after the reversed position last week, this week's upright star brings genuine restorative energy. The vitality is returning. If you've been tired, foggy, depleted, there is a measurable lightening this week. Support the healing actively, time outdoors under actual sky, which the star specifically evokes. If the weather allows it, find water, a lake, a river, the ocean, or even a bathtub if that's all that's available. The star's figure is always at the water's edge. Get to water and let it help. The last quarter moon in your first house may bring a physical release as the old self-definition begins to loosen. This can show up as literal body changes, posture shifting, tension patterns releasing, a sense of being physically lighter. Trust it. Watch your ankles and circulation if you've been sitting for long periods this week. Move the energy through. Walk more than usual. The circulatory system thrives when you're in motion. Personal growth. Aquarius, the star is the card that arrives after the tower, after everything has been shaken and the false constructions have fallen. The tower last in the major arcana's story clears the way for the star, the open sky, the clear view, the naked hope standing at the water's edge with nothing to prove. You've been through your tower moment, whether it happened recently or across the last several years. Things fell. And you kept going. And this week, the star is the acknowledgement that you're still here, and that the sky that appears after what fell is genuinely more open than the sky you had before. The growth invitation of the star is radical hope, the willingness to want something specific and good for your life without immediately translating it into probability or hedging it with "but who knows." You know things, Aquarius. Your pattern recognition is exceptional. But this week, suspend the analysis. Let hope be prior to the assessment. The last quarter moon in your first house is releasing an old version of your self-image, one that formed in conditions that no longer apply. The Pluto transit through your sign is writing a new one. You don't have to know yet what it says. You just have to be willing to let the old one go. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Aquarius this week is the habitual detachment from hope. The star requires vulnerability. It requires letting yourself want something. And Aquarius, who has been disappointed before by the distance between vision and reality, who has learned to position hope at a safe analytical distance so it can't hurt quite as much if it doesn't arrive, may struggle with the full unguarded version of the star's energy. This week, the invitation is to be closer to the wanting than you're comfortable with. Not recklessly, just honestly. Let yourself hope without the immediate caveat. Watch also for the Mercury in 5th house creative energy generating too many new projects simultaneously. Aquarius's air energy combined with Gemini's mercurial multiplicity can create a proliferation of beginnings that never quite arrive at a middle. Choose one creative direction this week and give it sustained attention. The last quarter moon in your first house may feel disorienting, as if a self you've relied on is loosening without a clear replacement yet visible. This is the process, not a crisis. Stay in it. Closing. Aquarius, the star is here. Upright. Clear. Shining directly for you this week. After the reversed position, after what was hard, after the hope that kept getting crossed, the signal is clean now. What you've been reaching for is reaching back. Your affirmation for this week: I allow myself to hope without reservation. The sky is clear. What I'm reaching for is reaching back. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and let the readings meet you every week. Comment below, what are you allowing yourself to hope for right now? The thing you haven't quite let yourself say out loud. Until next week, Aquarius. The star is yours. Look up. Pisces, week of May 13th to 19th, 2026. Starspoken weekly reading. Pisces. Water sign. Mutable force. The last sign of the zodiac, the one who carries within them the memory of all 11 signs that came before, who feels the world in its full, unfiltered depth, who dreams in colors that don't have names yet, who has always known that the veil between this world and whatever lies beyond it is thinner than everyone else believes. This week, the cosmos offers you a completion. Mercury enters Gemini on May 13th, activating your 4th house of home, of roots, of the family, biological or chosen, that forms the emotional foundation beneath everything you build. Mercury in Gemini in your 4th house quickens domestic conversations, something about your living situation, your family dynamics, your sense of home and belonging may need to be spoken and understood this week. A conversation that has been circling the real thing may finally find its words. The waning moon moves toward its last quarter in Aquarius on May 18th, falling in your 12th house, your most natural, most native territory. The 12th house is the house of hidden things, of karma, of spiritual depth, of what lies beneath consciousness. The last quarter moon in your 12th house is one of the most profound releases available to any sign, the invitation to let go of something ancient. An old wound, a karmic pattern, a way of suffering that you have made so familiar it has started to feel like identity. It is not your identity. This week, you separate yourself from it. Pisces, the full moon in Scorpio last week opened deep channels, and you, as a water sign, felt them fully. The emotional and spiritual material that surfaced last week is the very thing the last quarter moon in your 12th house is now completing and releasing. The cycle is whole. And then, the card. Love and relationships. The tarot card for Pisces this week is the World. The last card of the major arcana. The card of completion, of wholeness, of arrival after a long journey. A figure dances in the center of a wreath, holding 2 wands, active and receptive together, surrounded by the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. She is not celebrating having arrived. She is the dance itself. She has become the journey. For Pisces in love this week, the World is the card of a chapter completing in your most intimate life, and for the first time in a long time, that completion carries the quality of genuine resolution rather than unfinished business. Something in your love life has come full circle. A relationship that has been in its own kind of liminal space, not quite ending, not quite beginning, may resolve this week into its clearest, truest form. A pattern you've been repeating in relationships may finally, actually, break, not through effort but through arrival. You simply realize you're not doing it anymore. The World in love says, you have grown into someone who is ready for a love that matches who you've become. Not the love you accepted before, not the one you were patient with out of longing, the one that is genuinely, reciprocally whole. For those in relationships, if this relationship is your world, if it is the love that has held your growth and witnessed your becoming, this week celebrates it. For those who are single, the World is arrival at readiness. The journey you've been on has been preparing you. You are not waiting anymore, you are ready. your action step this week * acknowledge the journey. Write down, or sit quietly with, what you have survived and grown through to become the person you are right now. Let yourself be proud of the arrival. Money and career. Pisces, the world and professional life is the energy of completion and mastery, the moment when the work you've been building coheres into something that is recognizably, unmistakably yours. Mercury in your 4th house this week may activate work-from-home conversations, family business matters, or professional decisions that are connected to your sense of home and security. Pay attention to the domestic and private sphere of your professional life. Sometimes the work that matters most happens in the spaces that aren't visible to an audience. The World as a Career card says, you are arriving at a level of professional mastery that is ready to be shared, scaled, or taken to the next stage. Not someday, the threshold is closer than it appears. What would you do with your career if you fully believed that you had arrived at the level of capability that the world suggests? The last quarter moon in your 12th house on May 18th asks you to release any lingering professional fear that operates below the conscious level, the ancestral belief that people like you don't succeed this way, the inherited scarcity that says it's not safe to be seen in your full professional power. These are not your beliefs. They are what you were given. This week, you can give them back. Health and energy. Pisces, you rule the feet, the part of the body that connects you to the earth, that grounds the dreamer, that carries you from one moment to the next even when the road ahead is unclear. The world shows a dancing figure, upright, in full motion, completely at ease in her body. This week, your body is invited into that ease. Not performance, not discipline, ease. The movement that feels like your body celebrating rather than your body obeying. Take care of your feet this week in a literal and devoted way. Foot soaks, massage, walking barefoot on grass or sand if the climate allows. The world arrives through the feet, through the body that has walked the whole journey and earned the wholeness. The 12th house last quarter moon is a powerful release of unconscious material, and that release can show up in the body as vivid dreams, unusual tiredness, or a sense of emotional processing happening below the surface of waking awareness. Let it. Don't push through this week, rest when your body asks for it without requiring justification. Pisces can sometimes detach from the physical body during periods of spiritual intensity. This week, stay embodied. The world is a dance, and dances require a body. Personal growth. Pisces, the world is the card of your homecoming. You are the last sign of the zodiac, and you carry within you the accumulated experience of every sign that came before, the courage of Aries, the groundedness of Taurus, the curiosity of Gemini, the tenderness of Cancer, the fire of Leo, the precision of Virgo, the fairness of Libra, the depth of Scorpio, the freedom of Sagittarius, the patience of Capricorn, the vision of Aquarius, and all of it has been filtering through you, accumulating, composting, becoming the particular, extraordinary, irreplaceable thing that is Pisces at its fullest. This week, the world asks you to claim that fullness. Not humbly. Not carefully. Fully. You have been in a long cycle of growth, of loss, of spiritual development, of the particular kind of deepening that can only happen over years of living close to the truth. This week is a completion. Not the end, the completion. The moment when the effort and the becoming meet, and you can see the whole shape of what you've been building. The growth invitation of the world is integration, all of it, everything, woven together into the singular, coherent, dazzling complexity of who you are right now. Be all of it this week. Don't edit. Don't moderate. Be the whole world. Challenges and warnings. The primary challenge for Pisces this week is premature dissolution. The world is a completion, and for Pisces, completion can sometimes feel like permission to dissolve, to merge back into the ocean, to let the self become formless again before the next thing begins. This impulse, while natural to your sign, can mean you don't fully claim the arrival before you're already moving on to the next journey. Stay in the world this week. Let the completion land before you start building toward the next one. The integration requires presence. Be present. Watch also for the emotional richness of the 12th house last quarter moon pulling you too far into the psychic and unconscious dimensions at the expense of the practical and embodied. Pisces is capable of extraordinary spiritual experience and also capable of using spiritual experience as an avoidance of ordinary life. This week needs both, the transcendent and the grounded. Finally, Mercury in your 4th house may surface some domestic or family tension that feels untimely, as if it's interrupting the beauty of the world's arrival. It isn't. The conversation is part of the completion. Say what needs to be said. The world holds it. Closing. Pisces, you arrived. After everything, after the depth you've sounded, the losses you've metabolized, the dreams you've carried and sometimes mourned and carried again, you are here. You are the world. Not as a destination, but as the dance at the center of the wreath, fully inhabited, fully yourself. This week is yours. The cycle is complete. The next one begins when you're ready, and you will know when that is, because you always do. Your affirmation for this week: I have arrived. I claim the wholeness I've earned. I am the dance, and the journey, and the destination, all at once. Stay with Starspoken. Subscribe and let the readings meet you every week of the journey. Leave a comment. What cycle is completing for you right now? Tell me about your arrival. Until next week, Pisces. The world is dancing. And so are you.